Hey guys, in this video I'm going to talk about what blocks self-acceptance and world acceptance and how to cultivate an understanding especially of self-acceptance that will make the quality of your life better. It has made the quality of my own life better. I'm going to tell you about a couple of questions you could ask yourself when we are down on ourselves that help to start to change the situation around for us. Though this video is a continuation of the last video, you don't have to have watched it in order to understand this one. Just know that we make rigid demands on ourselves, others in the world, that leads to a blockage to acceptance. And at the end of this video, I'm going to give a cohesive review of this video and also the last video, which you'll appreciate. So let's get started. The third way we make a demand is by making global evaluations. And what I mean by that is that you make a evaluation regarding a whole thing, such as I am bad. So I make a global evaluation about myself. You are bad. You're making a global evaluation about someone else. The world is bad. You're making a global evaluation of basically the globe. And another way you're making a global evaluation is by saying, I am a loser or he is a failure. Assigning some permanent negative quality to something. So example, I am a loser would be one that applies to the self, or one that applies to others is he is a failure, or the world is an unfair place. The reason why we do this is due to a linguistic confusion. So when I use the words am, are, is, in the English language, we assume that means equal, right? I equal bad, you equal bad, the world equals bad. But really, that is the way the English language simplifies sentences. Or when I say I am a loser, that means I equal loser. But really, it is something that we may be doing. We may not be doing a certain task in a way that we would like, and we fail at doing that task. We might just globally evaluate ourselves as being a loser. So there's some neuro research that shows that when we assign a global negative permanent trait to ourselves, like loser or failure, that our brain actually shuts down. And when our brain shuts down, it lowers our functional IQ. It makes it difficult for us to be able to do better. A metaphor would be that in order for people to operate well, they need a certain level of care. If they're not making enough money or they don't have a place to live, it's hard for them to think straight because their brain is in survival mode. And the same thing occurs when we assign a global label on ourselves and call ourselves a loser or a failure. Our brain actually shuts down in the same way. It starts to go into survival mode. So I think something that would help is to know that people are complex and cannot be judged in such simplistic terms. And this will help us come to a greater acceptance of ourselves, others, and the world. So some useful tips to help with global evaluations is to know that I and others are fallible human beings. We could rate the behavior, but it does not make sense to rate ourselves as a whole person or others or the world. And when we stop rating ourselves, we'll be in a better position emotionally to work things out. We won't collapse because our functional IQ went down due to the stress that we give ourselves by calling ourselves bad or a loser or a failure. Instead of rating ourselves, when we look at the behavior itself, that in the end is more useful because you are able to evaluate the specific things to improve in your life. If you're coming into a situation and that you want to get better at, but every single time you make a mistake, you make a global evaluation of yourself as in a negative way. Imagine how painful that must be, or how difficult it must be to improve, to have the weight of your own self-esteem be based on how you do. So this is why unconditional self-acceptance is different from self-esteem. So it's important to develop unconditional self-acceptance, to accept yourself and rate your behavior. When you're basing things solely on self-esteem, self-esteem rises and it also collapses and lowers based on your competence in doing something. So when you are in a negative state and you're thinking negative thoughts, something that's just useful to ask yourself is, does thinking so help you? Or how is it serving you? If it's not serving you, there's no reason to think that, right? So that's why I said when we have these must or ought to statements, they tend not to be useful statements because they are very rigid and very black and white and not very useful in our day to day. So an example would be if I say to myself over and over again, people must be wearing masks, people must be wearing masks, people must be wearing masks. And every single time I go outside and I see people not wearing masks, I'm going to frustrate and make myself angry. That is only going to torture me, right? It's not going to help other people wear masks by making myself think that they must be wearing masks. Another thing is you could ask yourself, what would you tell a friend in a similar situation? Because we are often much harder on ourselves than other people. And when it comes to a friend who's having a bad time, we tend to be much more empathetic and caring and understanding, and we may look at the situation more objectively. So when you could apply this to yourself, use what you say to a friend onto yourself, that could be helpful for you. So let's do a bit of a review here. Making demands on a world by using must or should or have to statements, or it is awful or I can't stand it statements, leads to non-acceptance of ourselves, others, and the world. It's important to know you have the right to your own feelings. So acceptance starts somewhere. When we have feelings, that's what makes us human. And when we get angry, upset, or sad, we could come to an acceptance of those feelings. It doesn't mean that we agree with the feelings, but we acknowledge they are there. We don't have to embrace and love those feelings, but we could acknowledge that they're there. And the thing is, when we start to push away those feelings, that's not acceptance, and that can be really difficult on ourselves. And the thing is, when you accept your feelings, it becomes easier to accept the world around you because you're practicing a sort of acceptance. So people often think that acceptance means feeling neutrally, but it's not human to be feeling neutrally about things. Of course, you'll be feeling upset or angry or sad if someone has broken up with you, or if you're having a difficult time at work, or even if your computer is slowing down, or any number of things. So to help, you could change your have to statements to I want to, I prefer to, I desire to statements, and that will help soften this statement. And also it's more reflective of reality. The next thing that we could do is to change the it is awful statements to it is unpleasant, it is bad, it is misfortunate. We could change the I can't stand it statements to I don't like it, but I could stand it. And we could change the I am a failure to a development of unconditional self-acceptance. So something I want you to know is that it takes time to practice this. It's not like you try this once and it's going to make everything all better. I bet if you were to change your sentences, you'll find an immediate short-term benefit for doing so. But really, retraining in mind is a lot like going to gym. You go, and in the beginning, you don't like going to the gym. Going to gym could be a little bit challenging, but afterwards, you look forward to the high you get from going to gym. So the same thing with these statements. When you practice them enough, you start to get really into it.